Welcome everybody to another edition of the Weekly Rant. New backdrop, lighting's a little better maybe, I don't know, you tell me. There was like that fuzzy thing last time. Last week, as you may have seen, the lighting caused a spray tan to look a little, a little much. Hopefully we got all that fixed up, and let's do this. Since last week's blog, where a lot of you got pwned pretty hard with that April Fool's joke, I have been to Dublin and back, and I must confess, I was not really looking forward to this trip. There wasn't a lot about Ireland that was on my to-do list in terms of countries to visit. It didn't help that my trip started off pretty much as bad as it could. I finally got an RSA token, which is that little token you get from PokerStars, which is extra super duper security where nobody can hack your stuff. I lost that in the Las Vegas airport. Made my way to Gatwick, no sweat. My bags didn't make it to Dublin. So the next day I was planning on going to the Isle of Man to visit the PokerStars headquarters, wearing my sweats because that's all I had left. It was really late and I don't know. I was planning on dressing up, looking the part. We were going to film little stuff. I didn't want to be all schlubby. So anyway, I make it to my room. I got no bags, as I mentioned, and to top things off, the internet doesn't work in my room. So I'm going nuts. I'm complaining. Shocker. So the two security guys come up to the room, and I go to my bedroom because I have a suite, and there's two rooms to that. So I go to grab my laptop, all puffing and puffing like I do when I'm pissed off. And I bring it out here. Look at this, guys. Click on a page. See? I was ready to, freak on it. Go late. Nothing happens. Of course, works perfectly, right? What do you expect? I felt like an idiot, but whatever. How was I supposed to know it was going to work in one room and not the other? I called down. They said it's supposed to work everywhere. That next morning, my agent and I, Brian Ballsbug, made the 30-minute flight over to the Isle of Man to visit the PokerStars headquarters, and both of us were pretty excited about it. In a nutshell, I'd say that the whole experience visiting the headquarters in the Isle of Man was eye-opening, awesome, and very impressive. I mean, the company's legit. It looks like the way a company's supposed to be run. I think what surprised me the most was the amount of overseeing there was. And there's departments dedicated to internal audits. You've got guys dedicated, there's lawyers on site dedicated to making sure that everything that's being done is complying with the laws in all the different jurisdictions. Because PokerStars is actually regulated in 9 different countries, which is more than any other poker site. I believe it's 9, could be more. And they've also got a whole department dedicated to getting regulated in newer markets, like the US of A, which still isn't regulated, but seems like that's going to happen eventually. So I got a full tour of the entire office. I met with pretty much every staff member there and found out a little bit about what each of them does. And the one area that really blew me away, I had a meeting with the guys in charge of game security. Now what these guys do is they look to catch colluders, they look to spot bots or people sharing accounts and all those types of things. Basically stuff that players could use to take advantage of other players. So it's really not an issue that protects PokerStars as much as it is about protecting the players. Now I can't share with you all the tricks of the trade and how they go about doing this, but let me just say this, it's a little James Bond-esque. I mean, they've got a software program that they combine with the human element. You've got these guys and these guys take their job very seriously. I mean, we're talking James Bond, put it this way, okay? If you're thinking about doing something, you're going to get caught because stealing a line from the PGA Tour, these guys are good, and they're going to catch you. And while players taking advantage of other players doesn't directly affect the bottom line of PokerStars, they take it so seriously because it's so important to them as a brand to understand that these two things. Number one, your money is safe with us. And to me, that's the most important thing. And I think they proved that after Black Friday by making sure that they paid everyone their money as well as the FBP value that you had. The number two thing is you want to feel like they're looking out for bots and collusion and all these types of things. And I can say with absolute confidence, these guys take it about as serious as you can imagine. Tons of money and resources are thrown into game security and protecting players from other players. Before I left the island, I had a chance to speak to some of the head honchos, if you will, over at PokerStars, and we talked about a lot of different things. One of the hot topics of discussion, of course, was, the U.S. regulation. And pretty much everyone I spoke to seemed to be pretty confident about it happening. The timeline thing is one that's up in the air. Like, no one knows exactly when it happens. Some think it could happen really, really soon, and some think, it might take a while. But no one thought that it wasn't going to happen. And they're pretty dedicated to doing everything they can to rectify the situation in the U.S. So I think there's hope there. I think something is going to get done. Again, I just wish I could tell you when, but I can't. The next morning, I decided to take a little stroll through Dublin, and thanks to Twitter, a lot of you tweeters, what do you call these people? Tweeps? Tweet pals? I don't know. Recommended a restaurant for me. I'm a vegan, as some of you know, called Cornucopia. And thank you so much, because it was unreal. I mean, the food was like the bomb. I mean, they had all kinds of really good stuff there, and it was packed. I mean, jam-packed. There was tons of people in there. Well, my bag still hadn't arrived. I was starting to feel a shift in terms of how I felt about Ireland. I mean, I can't say that I've ever been to a country where, to a man, there were just nicer people. I'll give you an example. I was walking to Cornucopia. I had a little map with me. I don't know where I'm going. I'm looking for signs. There's a guy in a parked car honking at me, and I'm thinking, oh, what the hell does he want now? You know what I'm saying? Figure, if you do that in New York or in LA, it's not a good thing. Come here, he says. So I go over and he's like, hey lad, well, what can I help you with? And I was like, really? I mean, I figured this guy wants money. He wants something. He didn't know who I was. So, I mean, a lot of people might think that. He was just a gentleman and was trying to help me out. So he gave me the directions and all that stuff. And again, I didn't ask him. He just saw me struggling. Just come on over. It's such a simple yet powerful gesture that can change the scope of somebody's day. I mean, even later when I was actually playing the Irish Open, I was hungry and I tweeted out, hey, for €100, will somebody go get me food from Cornucopia? And I got bags of food from people. They didn't want money and they paid for it. It was like unreal, That obviously maybe they do because, they're fans or whatever. But just in general, yeah, the whole vibe about hanging out at the bar, having some drinks, and everyone's so jovial and friendly. I gotta say, I mean, I'm Canadian. We're known for being, friendly people. But Ireland, they stack up pretty well. So the whole purpose of this trip, aside from playing the Irish Open for the first time, was really to take part in the first ever I-Series live event. We had a really good group of players, a wide variety of styles. Let's take a look here and see what some of the guys who played in the event had to say about it.
Yeah, whether this can catch on, doing in-play betting on poker markets, I think it's very dependent on how this event goes. And the question is how big a market is there? No one really knows how much people want to bet on live and running poker. No one's ever done it before, so this will certainly be a great way of testing the water.
It's very interesting, like you can bet in any other sports, like tennis, football, and now is the first time you are able to bet in who's going to win the match.
I mean, I think the fact that it's a winner-take-all really changes things. I'm the type of player that, balls to the wall. I'm always going for first place, so you see me bust out really quick or you see me win the event.
So yeah, I mean, my biggest skill, patience is important. Hopefully I'll make some great reads, and I certainly have the stomach, the stones, the heart, the guts to make the big bluff when I think they're weak.
I'd sooner play with good players, really, And then these. Sometimes like you say, you sat on a table full of crash test dummies who don't say a word, and they just sit there with the hoods on, and it's I raise the butt. And we don't really want to see that, do we? We want some fun and action, and I'll try and stir it up and get it all going down there.
It'd be nice to win one on the continent of Ireland. On the continent of Ireland. On the continent of Ireland.
The continent of Ireland. Phil, man. That's very Jessica Simpson-esque. That's a good one. If you practiced that, bravo. But I don't think you did. I think you thought Ireland was a continent. So despite what you heard about, Faraz Jaka getting in there and ramming, jamming, and a whole bunch of people going broke early, it was 10-handed forever. We made it to the dinner break and nobody went broke, and we expected to be about 5 or 6-handed by then. I was doing pretty good in the event. There was only one guy ahead of me with 8 left, and that was James Dempsey, who's on my right. Now, since, as was mentioned, it's a winner-take-all, there's no sense trying to avoid him. So this hand that came up was pretty interesting. Faraz Jaka raised to 9,000 with the blinds at 2 and 4,000. James Dempsey called from the small blind. I called another 5,000 with the 4-5 of spades. Pretty standard. Now the flop comes gin for me. King of clubs, 6 of spade, 3 of spades. The whole royal straight flush draw thingamajigger. Not the royal, but you know what I'm saying. So it goes check. I check over to Jaka, who bets 19,000. And surprisingly, James Dempsey makes it 39,000. And I'm a little bit worried now. I've got a total of about 170,000, and I'm second in chips. I've got a monster hand, but there's a couple hands that worry me. If Dempsey has a king-high flush draw in kings, I'm pretty screwed. I've only got 8 outs. I'd have to hit a 7 or a deuce. Anyone, because a 7 or a deuce makes me a straight flush. If he just has one pair, I'm actually a favorite. If he has a set, small underdog. But I certainly can't fold, I don't think, and calling doesn't make a lot of sense, just in case I can push him off of top pair if he has a hand like king-jack or something like that. So I decided to move all in. It's another, 130,000 to him, and he tanks for a while. And what's going through his head, he was actually, and hopefully we'll get a clip of this for, next week's show or down the road, or you can probably find it at iserieslive.com. He was going through the process thinking, he knows I never have any just random one-pair hands. In that spot, I never have just like king-jack or king-queen. I either have a set or I have a big draw, which is pretty much what he thought. The one type of hand that he forgot that I could have was king-6 suited, king-3 suited, or 6-3 suited. I could have all those hands in that spot with a raise and a call in the big blind. I would have definitely defended with any one of those hands. So he had my range down to either like, a set where he's completely dead or a big draw where he's flipping a coin. Not exactly a good spot for him. However, he was getting close to 2-1 on the call, and so he ultimately made the call with the king jack of diamonds. So I was, as you can see, about a 56% favorite to win the hand. Nothing on the turn, nothing on the river, and I'm out. No shame in coming 8th. If you're not going to come in first, what's the difference? Sorry about the, not being first out for those that bet it, but those that I did tell to bet on James Dempsey at 9-1, they cashed in pretty good. So overall, I think the event was a success. We had, I think, close to 100,000 people watch it at any given time. And on top of that, I think about 90 to 95% of the feedback was positive. There was a few kinks at some times with the software and people's bets, not being paid out in times where they can put more action up. But all those issues are going to get solved. And overall, I think everyone was just hoping, okay, let's hope there's no major disaster. There was no major disaster. Win. Speaking of epic disaster, cardplayer.com released some new documents this week relating to the Epic Poker League Tour, whatever the heck it was, where it basically shows that they've somehow, with just 3 events, racked up $7.8 million in liability and had a total revenue of like $37,000. I mean, holy WTF, what the WTF are you WTF doing? I mean, really, how does that even happen? I mean, you either have to be really incompetent or just flat out fleecing your investors, or you're just knowingly spewing money, just like vomiting money all over the place. It's just impossible to spend that kind of money if you have anybody like overseeing and understanding how to do business. I mean, it seems like it's just a combination of the 3. They're incompetent, they were screwing the investors, and the worst part about all this is that a lot of employees are not going to get paid, most likely. Hopefully they do, but I don't see how. And then on top of that, you've got the charities. The charities, a lot of the money that was raised, the people that showed up and bought rebuys and things like that, and there's checks that were supposed to be issued to certain charities, and they haven't got their money. That's shady, man. That's really shady. Also in the document was a little bit of information about how much everybody was getting paid. And it looks like Jeffrey Pollock and Andy Duke were both, paying themselves in the neighborhood of like $300,000 for running 3 events. Nice for you. And all told, the executives were given $1.1 million for an event that raised $37,000 in revenue and just blew through $8 million, not including whatever else they actually had as a nut. I don't know how they did that, man. That's just impressive. Also interesting in the documents, you found a whole bunch of domain names that were bought by the Epic League that had the word wicked in them. They also had, if they bought Epic Poker Sucks, they bought Epic Poker Fail, so somebody had a sense of humor. As for the wicked issue, if you read Wicked Chops Poker, he has a little story about sort of how that came about, and basically it involves more lies and shadiness from Jeffrey Pollock and Andy Duke. They tried to take advantage of Chops. Didn't work out so well. It wasn't really legal what they're trying to do anyway, according to what I know. I'm not a lawyer, but based on what I know, they couldn't just freaking steal the guy's brand and call it, their league. They wanted to call it the Wicked Poker League. I mean, it's hard to think of a name worse than Epic Poker, but that was their original thought, Wicked Poker League. Really, for people that are great decision makers, you make a lot of bad freaking decisions. I've been reading a lot of comments and on the internet and some people's blogs about the issue of, even with this weekly rant, about sort of outing a lot of these people and talking openly about some of the scandals and whether this is bad for poker. Some people tend to believe that hey, let's not talk about these things. Let's just brush them under the rug. No, I don't believe that. I think that's the way things were done in the past, and that's why these things continue to happen, because you'd have people in positions of power or authority that shouldn't be. I mean, there's a group of people that just really did some bad things. You got Russ Hamilton, Howard Lederer, Ray Battar, Chris Ferguson, Andy Duke, and Jeffrey Pollock. They should not get off scot-free. We shouldn't be giving them the benefit of the doubt anymore. They've already screwed up plenty. There's plenty of proof at this point to show that they've all done things, very, very bad and shady things. And how do we look as a community when we allow these types of people to hold important positions in our industry? We need a complete overhaul. Out with the bad, in with the good. That's what I think needs to happen. We can't ignore it. We can't pretend that everything in poker is hunky-dory and there aren't any scandals going on. These need to be addressed. They need to be flushed out. Once they are, we have the opportunity to start a new poker world and regain the trust of the mainstream. At this point, ignoring it is not the answer. Now, while I enjoy reading, I wouldn't exactly characterize myself as a big reader, and I've never done the audiobook thing, but I thought I'd give it a shot, so I downloaded it onto my iPad, Hank Haney's new book called The Big Miss, and thought it was perfect for a 10-hour flight over to Europe. And I ended up enjoying the book so much that I listened to the whole thing the whole way there, and I really liked the audiobook thing, and I think I'm going to do that more often. What I couldn't help noticing as I was listening to Hank talk is how many times he was talking, and if I didn't know better, I would think he's talking about Phil Ivey, because there are so many similarities aside from the fact that they're both black and they're both the best at what they do. Based on what Hank Haney writes, it seems as though Tiger isn't as comfortable with the fame as you'd think, and Phil Ivey shares that. He doesn't really like the spotlight. He'd rather shy away. There's like an awkwardness, and an uncomfortability at the very least. Both these guys, they grinded harder than anybody else. They dedicated their entire life, Tiger Woods to golf and Phil Ivey to poker. And it brought me to thinking, like, what is the cost of greatness? There's obviously a lot discussed about Hollywood and how celebrities like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie can't live normal lives. But I'm more talking about people who, are great at what they do in terms of a sport or a game. Not necessarily poker, but you think of a guy like Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer was on top of the world. All he did was play chess. Obviously became socially awkward, and by the end of his life was completely paranoid. A lot of that due to the game. Chess teaches you to be paranoid. It teaches you always to be thinking about, well, what is their move? And if they do that, what are they going to do here? So I think that seeped over into his life, and he immersed himself so heavily into that I think it really was his downfall in so many ways in terms of him being ostracized from society and just basically losing it. There are plenty of examples like that if you really look into it. In poker, we had, Stu Unger, who was, for all intents and purposes, he grew up in the gambling world, in the racetrack as a kid. All he did was gamble. He became a genius at gin, becoming the best gin player in the world. On top of that, he won the World Series of Poker twice, and some saw him as the best no-limit player of his time. But even with his success, there was a cost. Depending who you asked, Stewie wasn't exactly the most likable guy. He had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He had issues dealing with just regular life, and, he used escapism. He got into drugs, and that shortened a career that, could have gone on a long time. He could have been playing with us today. It would have been great to see how Stewie Unger would have adapted his game, because he was obviously ahead of his time. I wonder how he would have done against the young online pros of today. Which is a good segue into why this really came to my mind. And I look at guys like Victor Blom and Daniel Jungleman Cates, who are obviously at the top of their game and two of the best online poker players in the world, and they spend an inordinate amount of time grinding. I mean, they're really putting all their eggs in one basket. I wonder what they're going to look like in 10 years in terms of their passion for the game. I know for myself, in the year 2000, after 3 years straight on the road, I burnt out. I just lost my passion for it and just didn't want to do it anymore. Not that I didn't want to quit playing poker, I just didn't take it as seriously. Everyone strives for success. Everyone wants to be the best at what they do, but you have to ask yourself sometimes, be careful what you wish for, and what is the cost of greatness. I just think it's so important at some point in your career that you find balance, and it doesn't have to be when you're early 20s, but at some point you have to find a way, and Phil Galfond has talked about this in his blogs a little bit, about life equity and happiness, and you have to find a balance. Being a grinder is important when you're young. You got to build up a bankroll, but at some point you need to find balance in life, otherwise you're going to burn out, and you could end up like Bobby Fischer or Stewie Unger or many other tragic stories. In a previous video blog, I shared a little clip with you and told you about a movie called Detention. Well, it opens this Friday, the 13th, and I hope you guys go and see it. You've got Josh Hutcherson, who's just recently become famous for the Hunger Games, and of course Dane Cook, and me. I'm in this movie. Not like a huge part, but I'm not playing a poker player, okay? It's not one of those cameos that I did in X-Men that I was in there for a second and a half, or Katy Perry video where I basically, it's like, yo, it's waking up in Vegas, The movie's playing in select theaters. If you want to know where it's playing, you can go to the actual website, detentionmovie.com, and click on the theaters link, and it'll open it up for you. It's a really fun, fast-paced movie, a lot of energy. All the reviews have been pretty good. I mean, a lot of people are really loving it. Most people think it's really weird, and it's kind of out there, but, that's a good thing. I think a lot of people are sick of the same old movies being regurgitated with the same sort of approach and style, and this one's definitely going to be different. Whether you love it or hate it, you're probably going to have an opinion. This week's DGen story of the week, I might screw up the facts a little bit with this one. This one really comes from Todd Brunson. He's told the story a couple times, and it's been a while since I heard it. But in the end, the whole premise is the same. There was a guy who used to play a lot in the Commerce area in Vegas, and his name was Mohammed. And this guy was I was likable. I mean, I was rooted for this guy. This guy was the guy who would take $2,800, to play some 10-20 game. And then a week later, he's got $800,000 on the craps table at Bellagio. And you're like, what the hell? And lose it. He's also the only guy I ever knew who, he played blackjack. And when he was stuck like $400,000 and just about to go broke, he was dealt a blackjack for his last 15,000, and he said, "Hit me." He just wanted to give he wanted to decide, and so he said, "Hit me" on a blackjack, which I don't even know what you could do. And for his last 15,000, he gave it away. I mean, that's when you know you've hit a level of like, whoo, this guy was out there. So anyway, Muhammad had his gambling issues and whatnot, and had money sometimes and didn't at other times. Todd Brunson, and again, this is where I might script the story a little bit. He was playing in a game in Egypt or something like that, some private game that he was playing, some high stakes guys, and Muhammad hadn't been seen for a while. Apparently, he owed some money around L.A. and no one had seen him. He was in a poker game and maybe bailed on it, and people were kind of looking for him. I don't know. Again, if I screw up some of the facts, it's slightly irrelevant for the whole point. So anyway, Todd sees Muhammad in the game, and he's like, he knows it's Muhammad. It's 100% him. But he looks over at Muhammad and he goes, "Aren't you that guy from L.A. that, owes all that money from that private game?" And Muhammad looks over at Todd. He's like, No, it wasn't me." So Todd, deadpan, goes, "Good, because I hated that piece of shit." I thought that was funny. Now for some good news, bad news. I feel like I'm just starting to get the hang of this video blog thing. I feel like I got the backdrop ready and everything else, but I'm about to go on the road. I've got some important things to do this week in LA and blah, 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 and then I'm going to go to Monte Carlo and I'm going to do a road trip for a couple weeks, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to put as much energy into the weekly rant. I'm still going to do something. If it's very raw and just me in front of a camera just talking BS, I'll do that. And then something will be released. It just won't have the production quality you've all grown accustomed to. I'll do my best to keep it going. I won't be back to Vegas probably till about May 17th-ish, right before the WPT Championship. In closing, I just wanted to say thank you once again to the people of Ireland. You really won me over. As I said, I wasn't really looking forward to going there, but it's the people that totally changed my tune, and I'm looking forward to going back to Dublin again. The hospitality in every single facet, from always having a beer, food, literally everything imaginable. I was well taken care of, and it was much appreciated. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with picks as I normally do, and we threw in a few Irish women. Enjoy.